Airplane crashes are scary because hundreds of people can die at one moment. All the accidents of the past were thoroughly investigated by experts to prevent similar events in the future. About 10 major airplane crashes and the reasons why they happened, we will tell you right now. Flying airplanes leave behind them air swirls. In 2001, an American Airlines Airbus A300 hit these vortices as it was departing from an airport in New York. A slight jolt, or what is known as turbulence, began. Instead of calmly waiting it out, the co-pilot began rapidly turning the vertical rudder left to right, and so he did several times. His actions caused the keel to break off. The Airbus fell on a residential neighborhood. The crash killed 265 people, 5 of them on the ground. Investigators found that the pilot learned the wrong actions on the American Airlines flight simulator. The program required the crew to act more aggressively than necessary in reality. If no one touched the vertical rudder, the airplane would level off on its own. In '83, relations between the Soviet Union and the United States were strained. Therefore, when an unidentified airplane entered Soviet airspace from the American side, a fighter jet was sent to intercept it. The intruder first flew over Kamchatka and then over Sakhalin. The Soviet military decided that the plane was a spy and shot it down with a missile. The intruder was a Karen Air Boeing 747 carrying 269 people. It veered significantly off course due to an improperly set autopilot. The world community was outraged by the actions of the Soviet Union. However, no one was punished. The accident was called a mistake of Korean pilots and a coincidence of circumstances. One of the biggest airplane crashes on the territory of the USA occurred in 79th year in Chicago O'Hare Airport. Immediately after takeoff, the left engine of McDonnell Douglas 1010 broke off, disrupting the electrical and hydraulic systems. The airliner lost control, tilted to the left side and went down. All on board died, as well as 2 on the ground, a total of 273 people. The cause of the engine detachment was a crack in the fasteners after improper maintenance. Mechanics were removing and installing the engines on the wing, not according to instructions. The method saved time but was too harsh. The inspection revealed 8 other airplanes with cracked engine mounts. Changes were also made to the wing design. In '88, the Persian Gulf War was going on between Iran and Iraq. The Americans were convoying tankers and other vessels as an observer, protecting them from shelling. On July 3rd, the U.S. warship Vincennes detected on radar an approaching aircraft that was not responding to queries. The identification system recognized it as an Iranian fighter jet. The ship's captain decided to shoot down the potentially dangerous object. In reality, it was a passenger plane. 290 people died. The incident was called a defensive action. No one was punished. On the contrary, the captain of the ship received an order for accomplishing combat missions. A fire in an airplane is an extremely dangerous situation. An example of this is a case that occurred in Saudi Arabia in the 80th year. 7 minutes after takeoff, a fire alarm went off aboard Lockheed L-1007. The decision was made to return to the airport. The landing went safely, but instead of immediately stopping and beginning evacuation, the pilots decided to drive to the taxiway. When firefighters approached the plane, no one opened the door from the inside. It took rescuers another 23 minutes to get inside. By then, the passengers and crew members gave no signs of life as they put out the fire. The hull of the airliner burned in half. 301 people died. The source of the fire has not been determined. It is known that the fire came from the luggage compartment. In '85, Boeing 747 Air India disappeared from radar screens as it flew over the Atlantic Ocean. Soon the first wreckage and bodies of passengers were found on the surface of the water. 329 people had died. All indications were that the plane had broken up in mid-air. Only when parts of the hull were pulled out of the water did it become clear a bomb had exploded on board. It was an act of terrorism. The explosive device was in a bag in the baggage compartment. X-ray screening at the airport was not working. The terrorists' plan was to destroy 2 Indian airplanes. However, the second bag containing the bomb exploded in a warehouse at the Japanese airport. The bomb maker was found and sentenced to a long prison term. In '74, the downing of 1010 near Paris was considered the largest airplane crash in terms of casualties. About 6 minutes into the flight, the baggage compartment door ripped off. The explosive compression threw 6 passengers out of the cabin. Along with the seats, important airplane systems were damaged, and the pilots lost control. 1 minute later, the 1010 plummeted into the forest at high speed. All who were on board, which is 346 people, died. Experts found that the baggage door had design flaws. Over time, the lock was loose. The airplane manufacturer McDonnell Douglas knew about this at the production stage. Then the door broke off in another 1010, but then the pilots miraculously landed. Only after the crash near Paris were all the doors put in order. The largest airplane collision in the air occurred near the Indian city of Charki Dadri in 96 mi. A Boeing 747 of Saudi Arabian Airlines was leaving the airport, while an IL-76 of Kazakhstan Airlines was preparing to land. They should have missed each other at a distance of 300 meters in altitude, but their trajectories crossed. The crash claimed the lives of 349 people. As it turned out, despite the dispatcher's instruction to stay at a certain altitude, IL-76 descended. Perhaps the pilots did not hear the instructions or did not understand them. In addition, the airplanes did not have a warning system about dangerous approach, and the outdated radar of the dispatcher showed only the location, but not the height of the airliners. Today, airports have more modern equipment. The largest airplane crash in terms of deaths per airplane is the downing of a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 near Tokyo. 12 minutes after takeoff, the plane's keel broke off and it became uncontrollable. The pilots, adjusting the thrust of the engines, managed to keep the airliner in the sky for about half an hour. Up and down it went. One of those turns ended in a crash. 520 people died. 4 survived. The cause of the tragedy was the destruction of a sealed bulkhead in the tail section. A hole was formed, into which air escaped from the cabin and under pressure destroyed the keel. It turned out that the bulkhead had been damaged in a hard landing 7 years earlier, and Boeing had made improper repairs. 2 technicians, believing themselves to be involved in the accident, died by suicide. The worst airplane crash in terms of casualties occurred not in the air, but on the ground. On March 27, 77, Los Rodes Airport on the island of Tenerife was overloaded. The dispatcher put 2 passenger Boeing 747s on the runway. One was waiting for a departure command, the other was moving down the runway and was about to turn off. Due to fog, visibility did not exceed 100 meters. The dispatcher spoke with a strong accent. After another communication session, the commander of the KLM Boeing thought that takeoff was authorized and started accelerating at full throttle in the fog and crashed into the Pan American airplane. The collision resulted in 583 fatalities. KLM Airlines has taken responsibility for the accident to avoid similar accidents in the future. Changes were made in the rules of communication between pilots and dispatchers.